Hi people, it's me Anja, my pronouns all she and her, and welcome back to my channel for a new chapter in my series where I read a YA book that was published a decade ago for the first time to see whether or not it aged well. And the last book in this series that I read was Paper Towns, which I feel like I read almost like 6 weeks ago or something like that. So basically, with this book, I have super low expectations for it because first of all, when I was looking at Ali Carter's Wikipedia page before filming this video, first of all, I found out that's a pen name. Second of all, I realized that I used to see her Gallagher Girls series in the library when I was younger, but I was never interested in them, so I didn't know that she had this separate Heist Society trilogy. And also, second of all, I've read her middle grade debut and I reviewed it on this channel 4 years ago, but then I never read the sequel. Anyway, all that to say, when I was younger, I never quite took spy stories seriously when it came to spy stories featuring teenage main characters. But I did enjoy the Spy School series, the middle grade series by Stuart Gibbs, when I was younger, and that was more fun to read because the characters are like 12. Anyway, all that to say, I'm currently going to read Heist Society by Ali Carter, which is a YA contemporary that was published in 2010. So I am also expecting this book to be very much like white and heteronormative, which is what I say about every single book so far in this series of YouTube videos that I have filmed so far, and I've been surprised. But with that said, I don't know. I'm excited to read this book. I might even enjoy it. I mentioned in a recent video that I've enjoyed books in the past that discuss like spies or secret societies or whatever, but what I really meant in that statement is that I prefer reading about that in fantastical settings or historical fiction settings, not so much in contemporary settings, because again, it's hard to take seriously reading about a teenage spy, because spies, even though obviously they exist in real life, teenage spies don't. You know what I mean? It's like when I rewatch or see clips of Casey Undercover on Instagram, since I follow Zendaya now as an adult in her adult acting life. Clips, obviously, of the show that she used to be on Disney Channel resurface on my For You page. Like, it's hard to take seriously because it's just silly. Does that make any sense? Anyway, all that to say, I'm excited for this book, but I'm very skeptical. To be quite frank, when I started this YouTube series on my channel back in April or May or whenever I read the selection, I figured that these books probably wouldn't age well, and even though I didn't specifically have a list of YA books that were published in the last decade that I really actually wanted to read, because again, and I've mentioned this before, but the whole point of this video series is that I wanted to read a book that was published in the past decade for the first time, so I didn't want to reread anything that I actually read a decade ago. So basically, I knew that this video series would just be a bit of fun, but I wasn't actually expecting to actually enjoy any of these books at all. So to say that I'm already hooked by the story from the first chapter is quite a shock. But like, that was so cool. Anyway, basically, this main character has a mysterious past, and she was just expelled from a boarding school for something that she didn't do but she was framed for. And I don't really think that that's the main point of this story, but I think that she comes from like a spy family, but obviously like this isn't public information. Anyway, I'm hooked already from the premise, from the first chapter. Like, I'm intrigued, I'm hooked, I'm seated. Let's fucking go. So hello. First of all, I feel like I didn't really explain to you the synopsis of this book at all, as per usual, so I'm going to explain it now. This story is a YA contemporary following a young main character who's 15, and her name is Catalina. And basically, she's part of this spy family, and she recently got expelled from a boarding school because she was trying to maintain this fake identity because she was trying to live a normal life and leave the spy life, although it hasn't been explained as to why she wanted to be a quote-unquote normal teenager, but now she's come back to the spy business because her father's in trouble and she wants to help him, and her past, like her spy past, as to why she wanted to leave, hasn't yet been explained yet, but it will, I'm pretty sure. Because currently, she's on a mission trying to clear, I guess, her father's name, because he's an art thief, basically. And she's with her, I guess, partner, her peer Hale, who I guess is her age. I don't know. There aren't a lot of descriptions, frankly, as to what she looks like, which, first of all, she's a spy, so I think that's kind of the point. And I know on the cover, she's like a white brunette girl, but in my head, I can imagine her as any race I want, which is fun. So, yeah, basically, I'm enjoying this book, and it's much more intriguing than I thought. And also, second of all, I think I also missed the third-person narrative, because I feel like the majority of the books that I've read so far in this video series that I've done were written in first person. I could be wrong, but I feel like third person is so much more like well articulated when it comes to world building, because there's more perspective as to what's happening around the character instead of just through their eyes and what they see. I was about to say, does that make any sense? But I feel like I just explained the basic fundamentals of third person versus first person. So anyway, I'm enjoying this book much more than I thought I would right now. I'm about 100 pages into it. So yeah, there you have it. I'm now like halfway through book one, and I say book one with caution because I might just finish this entire trilogy. This writing is very addictive. It's very, very easy to read and to digest. However, speaking of the clue so far, this book speaks like it was written in 2010. I can't ignore that, and evidence of that is that, first of all, she and her cousin are the only girls in this clue. What? Why can't one of the two brothers be a girl? Like, I don't understand this. Second of all, this comment right here. What? Why are we doing this thing where the only thing that girls are, like, known for is their beauty? What? It's also heteronormative because it's assuming that these brothers are attracted to her beauty as opposed to, like, being attracted to men. So it's kind of misogynistic and sexist as well, which feels very 2010. So, anyway, this book kind of reminds me of why I really enjoyed the first Now You See Me movie, and why also the sequel was so bad, because it relied so much on 2012, like, misogynistic humor, and also the plot sucked. So, with that said, I have super low expectations for Now You 3 Me, or Now You See Me 3. I'm excited for it because I obviously love Ariana Greenblatt. I think she's iconic. I'm so proud of her career and everything. And her personality is, like, so good and relatable and awesome. And I'm so glad that she's growing up in an era where more and more celebrities are becoming more and more themselves in public online. Does that make any sense? I feel like when I was younger, interviews felt so scripted and banal, but now celebrities, especially with other artists like Renee Rapp and everything, seem more personable. I don't know if that's actually true, or if I've just been paying more attention to celebrity interviews lately. But anyway, in general, I'm enjoying this book. I think it's good. I don't know if I think yet if it's revolutionary necessarily, but it's fun. It's a little silly, but it's fun. I'm intrigued. I don't know how the plot's going to go. I wonder if the mother's actually dead. And yeah, there's that. First of all, we have this. Misogyny from 2012 again. Anyway, aside from that though, like, I'm not really surprised about all these comments about like what goals are supposed to be like and whatever, because again, this book was published in 2010. The ways in which authors talked about feminism and gender roles and everything in 2010 is very different, or maybe it's quite the same than how we talk about it now in 2025. And I'm not even talking about like bringing like queerness into the conversation, just in general, including queerness as well. Anyway, basically, I'm now almost done with this book. Again, like I said, the writing is very addictive. And also, second of all, I don't trust Nick. I feel like he joined the crew too easily. Like, yes, Catalina recruited him because he's also a thief and she needed him. But, like, I definitely don't trust him at all. I think he's definitely going to rat them out. And I think that Catalina hasn't noticed yet because she's lusty. You know what I mean? Since she spent all that time at the boarding school for 3 months. And she keeps saying 3 months isn't that long, but everyone around her is like, yes, it is. In this world, 3 months is a very like long time to be away. Anyway, that's where I'm at the moment. So I finished book 1 and I rated it 3 stars because, first of all, I think the spy stuff is super intriguing and I loved learning about like her family backstory and stuff. I wish that the found family itself was more like developed, like the crew and stuff, because like here's the clue. It's her, Hale, her cousin, and then I keep referring to them as the twins. I don't know if they're actually twins or not. But like, and then those 2 brothers who were blacklisted or whatever. And then, well, they kept saying that there were 6 of them, so there was obviously one more. Maybe his name is Simon? I don't know. Half this crew are like underdeveloped characters to me. And then we had Nick, who's randomly added. Maybe he's the 6th one. Maybe there were 5 original members and he's the 6th one. Anyway, I was right, obviously. He's not one to be trusted. I think this book was written for like 10-year-olds rather than like 14-year-olds. And also, speaking of, the scene where they all keep commenting on her boobs, what the fuck? That was so weird. I don't like that one. But anyway, on to book 2. So I'm 5 chapters into book 2, and it's always so interesting whenever like books talk about stealing from museums and stuff, especially since now we're more aware that museums have a history of stealing from Black and Indigenous cultures and like profiting off of their trauma on display. Does that make any sense? Almost exploiting them. But of course, this book is not going to mention any of that. And they are almost going to romanticize the act of stealing, the act of heists, etc., etc. But anyway, that's just a thing to note, in my opinion. Anyway, I'm 5 chapters in. As for the love triangle, I don't know if I mentioned this already, but the love triangle, technically, in the last book, I thought was lazy and kind of underdeveloped, in my opinion, just because obviously she's gonna choose Hale. Duh, we all knew that. Second of all, I wish that the characters well, better described. That was not well articulated. But like, for example, the only thing I really know about her cousin concretely is that she has long legs and wears short skirts. What does she look like? And I know that it's like she's a spy, so maybe she's constantly in disguise or whatever, so nobody knows her true like skin color or whatever. But like, what does Gabrielle look like? Like, what does she look like? Like, what is going on? What does she look like? Am I supposed to assume that all these characters are white? Like, what? Anyway, I need some descriptions. Any whoosies, I'm excited for this heist. Let's go! So I'm halfway through book 2 as of now, and Kat got conned. And frankly, I don't really care, because I'm not really paying attention, to be honest with you, to the minutia of the plot, even though, frankly, it's not that complicated to follow. But, like, second of all, I'm way more interested in the characters than I am in the plot, even though, like I said, the characters themselves are kind of underdeveloped since I don't really know what they actually look like, even though they all spies, whatever. Anyway, I think this series would be really good as a trilogy of movies, like a Now You See Me type of deal, but with thievery instead. I'm not quite sure if it would do well, since again it's promoting and romanticizing art thieves, but I also think it's quite interesting that Ali Calder has incorporated like actual real world history into this book and into the plot. Anyway, Kat just got conned, which is something that I can't say that I was anticipating because I wasn't really paying attention. You know what I mean? But I'm also not shocked because like her first heist ended way too easily, so I knew obviously there's halfway more of the book left, so there's more to say. So anyway, I'm excited to see what will happen next. I'm 20 chapters into book 2, and I just realized that in any other 2010 YA book, usually the only two girls in the cast are fighting over the same guy. But in this book, that doesn't happen because Kat and Gabrielle are related. So instead, in the last book, we had the love triangle between Nick and Hale and Kat instead. This book screams 2010 with all of that stuff. And obviously Nick made a reappearance because his mom's a cop or whatever. I don't like Nick because he's a very underdeveloped character. And I feel like he feels like a plot device. I feel like underdeveloped characters just feel like plot devices these days instead of actually like real people. Does that make any sense? I don't know. Maybe I'm getting sleepy. It's almost midnight after all. So I finished book 2 and I rated it 3 stars. I think the first one is definitely better than the second one in terms of like intrigue. Although like the second one is pretty much the same as the first one, except that there were new characters and Maggie and everything, so that was interesting. I think I've realized that my favorite part of heist movies is when it's revealed how the heist happened. You know, like I love the trope in film where it's the same scene filmed again, but from a different perspective. I don't know if that has a specific name. I'm not really up to date on the terminology in the cinematography, like, culture or whatever. But, like, you know what I mean? Anyway, all that to say, I'm now reading book 3. And also, it's taken me this long to really comment on, like, the generic book covers in this series just because, like, as I learn more about the publishing industry and everything, maybe Ali Carter didn't have a big budget when it came to the book covers of this series, as well as her previous book series, The Gallagher Girls, because those book covers aren't super great either, although she must have had a bigger budget when it came to writing her, like, next trilogy, as well as her middle grade books, because those book covers look way more appealing and way better. So she must have gained, like, more fame, I guess, between these books and her next series, the Embassy ones or whatever. Retrospectively, I do remember seeing that trilogy in the libraries as well when I was growing up, so she must have been quite, like, established. You know what I mean? But, like, sometimes you have to think about the bigger picture when it comes to people's book covers from an author's perspective and, like, how much money they have. I feel like the common man forgets to, like, take that into account when it comes to, like, marketing a book and, like, what the book cover looks like and the editing and everything like that, because there's so much, like, secrecy in the publishing world that's not really common knowledge. But anyway, all that to say, here I go with book 3. So I'm 3 chapters into book 3 so far, and I have a feeling that this one might be my new favorite. And I think this trilogy suffers from second book syndrome, or whatever it's called, whenever the second book in a trilogy is the worst. Or at least I think that's because historically the second book in a trilogy serves as the bridge between book 1 and book 2, and it feels like it cannot stand on its own, if that makes any sense. I don't know. Sometimes I feel like in my booktube videos, I explain things that are incredibly obvious to me, so it feels as if I'm explaining extremely obvious things to other people, but then I remember that people might be new to these sorts of things, and I might not be explaining extremely obvious things to them, so to you, this might be new information. Anyway, all that to say, I'm thinking that this book might be my favorite, even if I'm only 3 chapters in, because it seems to be more focused on the emotional, like, relationship between Kat and Hale, because previously we knew nothing about Hale's family prior to this. We knew how they met, and we knew that they'd been working together for a few years prior, which I guess they met when they were 13 or 12? I'm so confused about how old they're supposed to be, because their age isn't really mentioned all that often. I think they're 15 now. Anyway, we don't know anything about him, although it's not really suspicious because we don't really know anything about any of the other characters either. So it can't just be all chalked up to the fact that they're all fucking spies. 15-year-old spies. But anyway, I don't know what the plot is yet, or if there's an upcoming heist, or anything. I'm just intrigued because I thought the romance had been established, but now it seems murky, which means there's drama. Juicy, juicy drama. So I'm excited. I'm 8 chapters into this book, and I think it's crazy work that Kat planned on stealing the real will of... What the fuck is happening? What is she planning on doing? I completely lost my train of thought. She plans on stealing the real will of Hale's dead grandmother, where in the fake will that they just read, he inherited all of it. So essentially, like, his entire family got disowned, and he got all of the riches, but he's a minor, so he can't touch it until he's 25, or whatever. But, like, the maid, essentially, the doorman, one of the servants, Marcus, and his sister, used to be best friends with the deceased, and they are hiring Kat to find the real Will because they think that Hazel left something behind for Marcus's sister. And also this entire time, I kept forgetting that Marcus works for Hale and not Kat. I kept thinking of him in my mind as Albert, like from Batman and stuff. Anyway, how does Marcus's sister Marianne know that there's something left behind for her? Like, what if there isn't, actually? Anyway, that's where I'm at right now. That's crazy work. Hale's gonna kill her when he finds out. Isn't he? I mean, obviously there's a happy ending, but like, this third act is going to be interesting. Hi people. So I'm now 19 chapters into this book, and I think that somebody tipped him off and told him that Kat was going to be there, but maybe I'm overcomplicating it in my head, and I'm not remembering that this trilogy is literally targeted towards 12-year-old readers, so there's probably not as many layers in this mystery as I'm making it out to be. But like, I don't know. Hale found out about this heist, or this attempted heist, earlier than I thought he would, though. So that's interesting. Anyway, yeah, I guess they broke up. But obviously they're going to get back together, naturally, so. I've said before that the side characters in this story feel unbelievably underdeveloped, but this book really drives that home in the sense that, for example, Kat and Gabrielle have never really talked about anything together aside from Kat's love life, and nothing about Gabrielle's personal life at all. Like her personality, her hobbies, her love interests, perhaps. So, yeah, anyway, I'm almost 70% through this book. Obviously, I don't trust Gayla, nobody's supposed to. All of the villains in this trilogy so far have been very much, what's the word, cut and dry. Like, incredibly obvious, there aren't a lot of red herrings, the mysteries aren't exactly, like, difficult to follow, which is good, obviously, for a digestible read, if that's what you want. So, yeah, I might film the outro of this video in the morning because I'm so tired right now. I don't know if you've been paying attention to the timestamps in this video, but you should be if you're a good spy. Anyway, like I said, I am 70% through book 3 at the moment. I'm enjoying it, but some of the plot points happened earlier than I was anticipating, like I mentioned earlier. So we're back at it with a heist. So yeah. A telltale sign that this series was published in the early 2010s is the amount of times that the author keeps mentioning the word female to describe a woman or a girl instead of just saying girl. Second of all, the fact that Kat doesn't have any, like, older woman authority figures to talk to is truly interesting. Like, I know that her mom died when she was little, and there's been, like, no mention of her since, basically. But she doesn't have any aunts. Like, no aunts, no grandmothers, nothing. Everyone's either dead or evil when it comes to, like, older woman figures. Which is interesting, because you'd think that she'd have, like, I don't know, older woman authority figures, older spies to, like, look up to or something. But no, obviously she doesn't, because it's 2012, and all she has are her uncles and her dad. I know some people wouldn't see this as a big deal, but I do, because the lack of other girls in this book is just truly interesting, and it really goes to show how far we've come in terms of, like, representation now in 2025 versus 2013. So, yeah, that's fun. Anyway, I have like 2 chapters left. So let's go. Let's finish this book out. So, in conclusion, I rated the third book 3 stars. And unfortunately, overall, this series was worse than I thought. I know that sounds contradictory to whatever I was saying and venting about at the beginning of this video, but basically, I kind of had hope that this series would be better than I thought, better than the other books in this company, in this series. You know what I mean? But unfortunately, this series was mid and not very good. And comparing this series to the selection to the Summer I Turned Pretty, I would say that I preferred the Summer I Turned Pretty. And honestly, frankly, the selection too. I think this series is so underdeveloped in so many different ways. The spy stuff is kind of intriguing, but like the characters are so underdeveloped. It's like so annoying. You know what I mean? Like, at least in the selection, they felt more developed as the series went on. But in this series, like every single book felt pretty much the same. If that makes any sense. I don't know if it does. But anyway, in conclusion, I have finished this awful trilogy. And yeah, I felt like I talked so much about like the misogyny themes. I don't know if that was really unintentional or not. I don't really know. Again, this trilogy was published in 2012, and it felt like it was too. So in conclusion, this trilogy does not age well, and yeah. So there you have it. If you enjoyed this trilogy as a child, let me know, or as a teenager, or as an adult, or whatever. I didn't enjoy it. I won't be rereading it. So, anyway, in conclusion, if you enjoyed this long video, I actually don't know how long it is, but if you enjoyed this video, please don't hesitate to give it a big thumbs up. Comment down below the strawberry emoji if you made it all the way to the end of the video. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to my channel if you're new, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.